Hi, teachers. Leela Viss here. Are your students preparing for theory tests? Mine are, and I notice that they don't always know how to draw certain things, like a treble clef, or how long are they supposed to draw that stem. So I decided to make some worksheets to help my students, and I think they could help yours as well. So I'm going to walk you through them. Now, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that you could print one of each one of these worksheets and then just put them in a plastic pocket like this. You can get them at Amazon, and then they can just complete them with a dry erase marker. And I've had students been doing that this week during their off bench time while they're listening to classical music, which is they've been enjoying doing that. So I highly recommend going this route so you don't have to make so many copies. Or if you're teaching only online, you could have them annotate certain worksheets during an online lesson with Zoom, or you could send them PDFs via email or through a Tanara assignment, and then they could complete them at home on a device. So there's a couple of different options that you could use with these. So I'm going to share my screen and then I'll walk you through them. And I'm just going to do my desktop here. And now I'm just going to open up the very first one. The very first one is called Basic Staff. And this is just inviting students to trace things first. I think that's a great way to start, is just trace a treble clef, and it's a tall, skinny J, capital D, capital G, and then you can keep going and they can draw their own. So I always give space for them to practice tracing first of all and then drawing their own. Now on this one, I clear the drawings, I go on to the next sheet right here. There's opportunities for them to draw more that are smaller. I like to start big first, especially for little guys. It's nice for them to draw bigger shapes first, and then we can condense them down. And then this page, they can color line and space notes. They can number the lines and spaces. And there's also a chance for them to draw the three main first landmarks that I like to use: base F, middle C, and treble G. And what you'll notice here is, first of all, there's an example of everything that should be part of a graphic. And then they need to spot the differences, and they have to spot what's missing in the rest of these. So that's a neat opportunity for them to really get a handle on where those three landmarks are located on the grand staff. So that's the first one. Then, speaking of landmarks, I also made one for all the landmarks across the keyboard. So we've got from high C to low C, so cloud C and deep blue C. And then again, I've got graphics where things are missing and they have to add those missing things in, including ledger lines. It's a great way to discuss, how music is plotted on this grand staff and then where it's located on the keyboard. And then after that comes drawing aerobics, just drawing some of those things that they need to draw for tests, but they may not know. For instance, they may not know that this is called a bracket. They probably never pay attention to it when they're playing their music, but there is one of those. And then how long does a stem go? It goes for a whole octave. And how to draw uh, time signatures, bar lines, all that kind of good stuff. So once they trace the gray items, then what I like to do is have them draw it again. So I've left space for them to draw that same exact picture all on their own. And then I've got another drawing aerobics page where there's sharps and flats. And then this is an interesting thing too. Most people don't know how to draw the flags and where they go. Notice they're always on the right hand side, even if the stem is going up. So just interesting things that we don't really pay attention to. And then one more thing on this, I don't know, I got so many, I don't know what to call them, but this grouping of worksheets is something for them to review their scales. And so what I notice is that when students are asked to write out a scale or notate a scale in a test, they scrunch it up and there's all this room that's left over in a measure. So this is a place for them to really practice spreading out all their notes, and then that gives them room to add in their accidentals. And I've given space for a treble clef and a bass clef, and then you can just choose what key you'd like them to practice that in. And then drawing the flats. That's always a little tricky, knowing where to start and which direction they go. So there's the prototype, and then I've got the option for them to trace the flats, and then I start excluding some of those, and then they have to add them in. They have to figure out which ones are missing, and then they have to draw the flats themselves and write out the order. And of course, I have this for sharps as well. So that's in the next, or this bundle called Drawing Aerobics. And then I have another bundle called Circle of Keys. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can draw the circle of keys. And so I'm not saying that my way is the best, but I chose this way because all of my students know the sentence, fat cats go down alleys eating bananas, for their order of sharps. So I'm using that to help them complete a circle of keys. So here you'll see everything completed. And yes, I even have a fat cat up there by C, but notice I start the sentence at the F. So that's why I have fat there. And then they just go around, fat cats go down alleys eating bananas. And then I'm going to move this up further here. Wow, clear that. And then we start all over again with the sentence right there on that F sharp. And I'll get my little drawing tool here. And then this is the tricky thing, fat cats. And notice they have to go back to cats and then forwards to cat and then go down alleys eating bananas. So there's a little bit of a trick there at the end. Now, some of the things that tips that I give my students are the fact that C sharp has 7 sharps, C flat has 7 flats, and C has 0 sharps and flats. So 0 plus 7 is 7. So A flat major has 4 flats, A major has 3 sharps, 3 plus 4 is 7. So that can help them if they're doubting how they're doing with all this. Now, just like the other bundles that I've showed you, there's different steps that students can take as they move through here. So here, the number of sharps and flats is missing and they have to fill that in. And then here, the letter names for all the keys are missing. And then both of them are missing. And then nothing at all. And they have to try and fill it out themselves. Now, I also just wrapped up one with the minors in the middle. And this one, you can still use the same exact sentence. So we have fat starting on A flat. Fat cats go down alleys eating bananas. And then we have the next sentence also starting on an A. Fat cats go down, and here's a little tricky thing, alleys eating bananas. Now, all of this information I also have at the bottom of the very first page. So that is my strategy. Perhaps you have another one. You don't have to use mine, but you might want to use these sheets just to help your students practice completing the circle of keys. And then the next bundle, this one. Okay. Now, do you notice that a lot of tests, they give these students random starting notes, and then they have to name the interval above that random starting note. So I want my students to base the starting note of any interval on their knowledge of scales. So I kind of went bananas here, and I made a chart of all the scales and all the major and perfect intervals. So I have an example in C. That's everything that you need to know in the key of C. And because you know a major scale, you know major intervals and perfect intervals. And then the rest of them, there's always different things that are missing. Maybe I didn't add in the 2 there for the major second, so they have to add that in. Or maybe it's missing a note, and then they have to remember to add the sharp. Now, this is something a little bit different that some tests will not want your students to do. But notice I have the key signature here, but I also want them to add that sharp there because it just reinforces the key. And also that if they were just being asked just to identify this interval right here, they're going to have to think about the key of G, and wait a minute, a major 7th is F sharp. And hey, if they know a major 7th, then they're going to know a minor 7th. So this has really helped my students a lot by just, going through this and knowing their scales. That's an important thing as well. And now, rhythm. Most tests want students to write rhythm beneath rhythm patterns. And that's okay, but I don't do a lot of that in my studio on a regular basis. I want them to feel it and see the symbols. And so here's my way of getting them to think through rhythm. And I want them to think of measures as having beats, and each beat has a column. They have their own piece of real estate, so to speak. And so if there is a dot in that column, that means that there's something happening. And then they could count aloud. So usually I'll just start with just clap this back for me. 1, well, actually, I won't even count it first. And then they'll clap it back. And then I'll say, okay, now I'm going to count, and I want you to count with me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they would clap it back. And now I want them to look at the dots. Let's look at the dots and clap when you see the dots. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we'll look at the notation of it. So then it's their turn to figure out the notation of this next one. I gave one little hint there. So you can see I got one quarter note there. So they just have to draw the rest in. Let's see, there'd be a quarter note there, color it in. And then, oh, there's a rest there. I like to show students how to draw a rest with a Z and then a C. That helps. And then we've got one more quarter note here. And then the important thing is having them write in the counting so they see each column. I think that can really help. All right, now as I move forward on this, you can see what happens next is now I move the rest, or I take away the rest and I add in half notes, which really, with this concept, you could do either. So I made it very clear. One is going to be just rest. One is going to be half notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and I do 1, 2. I stretch it out so that they can feel the difference between a half note and a rest. And then let's see, oh, I've got eighth notes here. So notice what I did to the beat. I've got a darker part and then the lighter part, the on and the off. And so you can take a look at how I've done this again. Now I've added in the and, so now they understand what an and stands for. I think a lot of people get confused with that. And then I add in the eighth rest. So that is beginning dots. And then I've got some more in 4/4 time that incorporate eighth notes and 16th notes, and then dotted notes, all that kind of good stuff. So same exact thing. And then I also have one for 6/8. So those are the bundles of worksheets that I have prepared for my students that I would like to share with you so that your students can do well on their theory tests. All right, take care. Happy practicing your theory.